have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And at the top of the news, the Pulse massacre has been exceeded in carnage by the Las Vegas massacre, and Gays Against Guns and many other groups are once again mobilizing for sane gun laws.
We know at this point that there was one gay male couple victims of this massacre, one dead, one wounded. We'll tell you more about that. Meanwhile, the United States is one of only 13 countries, and not in good company, to vote against a UN resolution calling for the end of the death penalty for things like consensual same-sex relations. The U.S. says its vote was not about gay people.
Mississippi's virulently anti-LGBT law is set to go into effect on October 10th, but it is still being challenged.
The U.S. Supreme Court heard what may be the most consequential case in a generation. We'll tell you how it could affect LGBT rights.
We had a victory at the Census Bureau.
Yeah, a little astonishing. The bullied bisexual student in the Bronx who lashed out with a knife, killing one and injuring another, is charged with murder. The inadequacies of anti-bullying programs in the schools are thereby exposed.
The crackdowns on LGBT people in Egypt, Azerbaijan, and Indonesia have intensified in the last week.
In an historic announcement, the CDC confirms that people with HIV adherent to treatment drugs cannot transmit the virus.
And they said it flatly.
And in entertainment news, Andy and I will continue our lifelong disagreement about Will and Grace.
Okay.
But, of course, the top of the news everywhere and for everyone is the massacre in Las Vegas.
Yes.
Horrifying, disheartening, upsetting, all of that.
What's most upsetting is that we as a country can't deal with this stuff and can't get this thing under control the way other countries have got it not under control.
Well, I certainly we're worse than anyone. I don't know if anyone has it under control.
Australia had a mass shooting in 1996. Everybody hears this case.
Yeah.
And the conservative government of John Howard said, we are confiscating automatic weapons. You can't have them.
Yep.
This is a gun-toting nation. And they were so horrified by what happened that the gun owners went along with it. It was put into effect. They have not had a mass shooting since.
And certainly Australia is as much a cowboy nation as we are, so one has to wonder what the difference is.
The NRA.
Yes, exactly. And sadly, as we always look for in these situations, there is a gay couple that have been identified as victims of this shooting. On the right is Cameron Robinson, who was killed by this gunman. On the left is his boyfriend, Bobby Erdley, who held him as he died and who was hit by shrapnel himself and is recovering from his wounds. They're from Utah.
Yes.
And it's just, one of many tragic stories.
And while the Republican politicians were telling us not to politicize the thing and, this isn't the time to do that, Gays Against Guns went right out on the street that evening. I was with them, and marched from Union Square to Times Square. We have some pictures from the demonstration, and what they're doing is saying we're trying to bring the tactics of ACT UP to this public health crisis that we're in, and that's the message that they're trying to drive home.
And they have an ongoing campaign, and they are confronting the gun owners. They are going to gun shows in the metropolitan area here. I think there are other chapters of GAG, Gays Against Guns, forming. But they are willing. There's their demonstration in Times Square with a Gilbert Baker banner in the front. and a lot of signs and a big crowd, it looks like.
Well, I'll tell you, it was only about 200 people.
Well, that's substantial.
But they were willing to, take that, immediately move into action. That's the important thing, to give the visuals to show that people are not taking this lying down. And there's us. There they are in Union Square with what they call the human beings. These are in honor of the people who were killed in Orlando, and they appear in these white costumes and are silent throughout the entire demonstration, and also marched all the way.
And it's a very moving image, and I've done that. I've been one of the human beings, and it's very moving to do it. And it's an image that resonates through all these horrible events.
And I kept saying, because you meet a lot of tourists on the way up when you're on this thing, I said, this is, join us. The people were applauding. Some people were just amused by it. But my God, what could be more serious than this absolute carnage that is inflicted in this country all the time?
And more depressing than the inability to do anything about this.
And as people have said, if it had been somebody who was from ISIS or something like that, they would have been World War III, immediately from the White House. But instead, they just say, oh no, it's time for prayer. It's time to come together. Well, let's come together and do something about it.
As we are taping on Wednesday afternoon, the president is in Las Vegas. We haven't seen anything he's done there yet. So,
well, if it's anything like his antics in Puerto Rico, I'm sure
shameful.
it's
Shameful. I'm glad to see that Rex Tillerson has adopted my language and is calling him a moron.
Yes.
But we don't know yet what he's doing in Las Vegas.
Well, and then there's what the United States did at the United Nations this week. There was a big resolution on the death penalty, which cited the way it is abused against a lot of people, especially women and gays and gay people. And the United States was one of 13 countries to vote against it. It passed 27-13-7, but we joined China, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, all these reactionary nations. Now, apparently, the U.S. has a policy. Anything related to the death penalty, we don't vote for. In the Obama administration,
because we don't want to be held accountable for the fact that we have the death penalty.
We do. Yeah. And the Obama administration apparently abstained on one of these resolutions years ago.
This particular resolution condemned discriminatory use of the death penalty.
Against people with mental disabilities, people under 18, pregnant women, gay people, people who are in consensual same-sex relations.
Yes. And so there was an immediate condemnation of the U.S. for voting for this from the LGBT community on the grounds that they were voting refusing to vote against the death penalty for LGBT people. The State Department talked back against that and said this has nothing to do with gay people. We always vote against any condemnation of the death penalty. That's not what this is about.
Well, then they say the United States unequivocally condemns the application of the death penalty for homosexuality, blasphemy, adultery, and apostasy. But we always vote.
So why didn't you vote?
Well, exactly.
Against that. They said there was another part of it that was more widely condemning the death penalty, and that's why they
we deserve condemnation for that. Yeah. And one of the things that's been noted is that the U.S. presence on the in the the UN's LGBTQ human rights group is noticeably muted these days. We do not speak up about it ever.
Well, there we are. But we did have a small victory with the Trump administration. The Census Bureau was set to eliminate a question about sexual orientation on their survey, Census Barriers, Attitudes, and Motivators survey. This is not the large, every 10 years census survey, but one of their interim ones. And the National LGBTQ Task Force kicked up a big stink about this and said, we need this research.
And they want you to know that pressure on the Trump administration is,
can work.
It can happen.
And so the Census Bureau restored the question.
Maybe you can help stop the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett to the 7th Circuit as a federal judge. What came out about her this week is that she belongs to a Christian group called People of Praise. She's a Catholic, but it's called People of Praise, who swear lifelong loyalty And they're accountable to a personal advisor known as a head for men or a handmaiden for women. The Handmaid's Tale in real life. Here it is. Who needs Margaret Atwood?
Our Attorney General wants wants the Bible to supersede civil law. Our Attorney General.
Not to mention Roy Moore.
Yes, exactly. What is this woman appointed for?
The Seventh Circuit, federal, lifetime federal appointment.
And then, of course,
she'll bring God's law
to our court system.
Well, look at how much that atheist, soulless president talked about God this week in talking about these shootings.
I was also fascinated to see that as we learn more about the Russians using Facebook, I'm finally understanding this. It's been a little complex. That what they did was put up all these phony Facebook pages before the election, and some of them were labeled as LGBT group pages, and then they would put fake news on these pages. There was fake news after the Las Vegas shooting that the shooter was an anti-Trump liberal. They identified him by a different name. I
read it on the internet.
There is just this relentless tsunami of this attempt to manipulate reality.
All right.
So we've become victims of it too.
There may be some good news coming from the Supreme Court. They heard a case about Wisconsin gerrymandering that is one of the most extreme, hyper-partisan, gerrymanders in history, where Democrats win the majority of the vote, and the Republicans have a supermajority in both houses of the legislature.
Andy is correct. The original name of the guy it's named after was Gary, but most people call it gerrymandering incorrectly.
Nevada,
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So the Supreme Court has never held that doing this on a partisan basis is unconstitutional. If you do it on a racist basis, yes. But
they're reluctant to step into partisan politics.
They are. Certainly the conservatives are. But Justice Kennedy seemed open to this because it is destroying our democracy. It is putting people into districts that they can't lose, and that they never have to answer to the voters because they pick their voters. And it means that's part of the reason we don't have to deal with each other in this society anymore.
And they are manipulating the system to do it and drawing all these.
We do it too. We did it in California.
I'm not
That's why
saying we
Arnold
don't.
Schwarzenegger was in the court. He's one of the big proponents of ending this.
All politicians are out for their own survival, and that's why they do this.
The case was argued by
It's a power game.
Case was argued for our side. I say our side, but the side of decency, by Paul Smith, who was co-counsel in the Lawrence v. Texas case that eliminated the sodomy laws in the United States.
Yeah, and the other side was represented by Paul Clement, who argued against marriage equality. They just all show that's the same game. It's a traveling circus.
So really, winning this would be a big step forward. I don't know if there's enough time to affect the 2018 elections. I hope there is.
Well, it will come as no surprise to anyone paying attention that Neil Gorsuch is against outlawing this kind of manipulation of the system. He finds no constitutional basis for it. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg slapped him down with a little, you find no support for one man, one vote in the Constitution?
Yeah.
So.
The court is also going to hear, and this is a case I think we're going to lose, the Janice v. AFSCME case. This is about unions and their ability to, collect dues from their members for all kinds of purposes. And if we lose that, that's one of the only forces we have against the hedge fund managers and everybody else. And we're very likely to lose that. Kennedy is not sympathetic to that.
We must regain power in 2018.
But President Trump did somewhat distance himself from Roy Moore, even though he's still endorsing him. They read out in the press conference with Sarah Huckabee Sanders all of the horrible things that he said about gay people and Muslims and everybody else. And then she said, I wouldn't see any parallel between the two of them on that front. She said.
Just an accidental.
But I'm still endorsing him
Just an
because he's a great
accidental
American.
coincidence of views.
Yeah.
All right. Well, perhaps one seat we can win next year is the Senate seat in Arizona, where Kirsten Sinema, Democrat and out bisexual, the only out bisexual member of Congress, is now announced as a challenger to Jeff Flake, the Republican who holds the seat, who's on very shaky ground. Now, there are
Not the most liberal member of the Democratic Party.
We have condemned her frequently for her votes with Republican members of Congress. There is a more liberal Democrat in the primary against her, but she is considered very popular in Arizona, and she is a Democrat.
And they say she's a staunch advocate for the LGBT community.
100% rating from HRC.
Co-chairs the House LGBT Equality Caucus.
And she, most importantly, she is currently ahead of Jeff Flake in the polling in Arizona. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Well, I mean, Flake is going to have a farther right opponent, you know. So.
Exactly, which may also help us win that seat. Right. And we need every little seat we can get next year.
I see that Keith Ellison, who Roy Moore says has no right to serve in Congress because he's a Muslim, has introduced a resolution calling for protection of transgender people. And I believe there's going to be a march this week. When is it?
In New York on Friday at 6 p.m. There will be a gathering in Union Square, a rally to protect trans youth and adults. Taking into consideration both the kinds of bathroom bills, the murders of trans women, all the issues around the oppression and violence against trans people. 6 p.m. on Friday at Union Square in New York City on 14th Street and Park Avenue.
Nice to see Tom Price go as head of HHS over his corruption. We don't know who we're going to get in his place.
No confidence it'll be anyone better.
No, better. We're very worried about the new FCC chairman that they want, Ajit Pai. He's already a member of the FCC, but they want to make him the chairman. He's the guy who would destroy net neutrality. But we're fighting.
It's an endless list.
Well, and then Sam Brownback, who's beginning his hearings on. This is the guy, the Kansas governor, who was up for the federal religious freedom post, and he is just an absolute monster on these issues.
Yeah, well, at least they got him out of Kansas. And we're not happy about what's going on in Mississippi, where the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals says the horrible HB 1523 religious freedom law, which we've had on hold ever since it passed last year, can now take effect. This allows any business owner in Mississippi who objects to same-sex marriage or sex outside of marriage or transgender people in general can discriminate against all those people.
So Roberta Kaplan, who's the lawyer in the case, and she's the one who won the Obergefell case for same-sex marriage.
No, won the Edie Windsor case against
right,
Doma.
The Edie Windsor case, sorry. Apologize. But anyway, Roberta is arguing these Mississippi cases, and she says that she's doing everything that they can to try to get another stay, going to the Supreme Court. And the judge who originally declared this unconstitutional has now reopened sort of the Robbie's same-sex marriage case in Mississippi, and saying, well, if you're going to try to do this, where you're saying there's all these exemptions and all this kind of stuff, we have to establish that same-sex marriage in Mississippi is totally solid, and you can't be discriminating against you can't accord same-sex couples second-class status and treat them differently. Right. So he's reopened that case.
Yeah.
He's an African-American progressive judge in Mississippi.
It's a big fight and complex and continuing. And we won a fight in a federal court in Missouri where the court says that the non-biological mother of a 6-year-old son with her ex-partner can seek shared custody and visitation with her ex. A lower court had said, she's not the biological mother, the other one is, she has no rights, blah, blah, blah. And the federal court said, No, they had a relationship. They planned this child together. She was a full-time mom. Of course she has the right to seek some custody rights and some visitation.
And there's a case like this in New York that is so complicated, I am not going to tell you about it. I tried to read it, and Art Leonard changed the headline 5 times, and I said, forget it.
All right, let's move on to the poor kid in the Bronx who was being bullied mercilessly at his school.
There he is. His name is Abel Cedeno, 18 years old. He is now up on murder 2 charges, facing 20 years in prison for allegedly killing his classmate Matthew McCree, 15, and not critically injuring, but he injured also with a knife, Arain LeBoy, 16, during their history class at a Bronx school.
Now, there is dispute about the facts of this case because, of course, the families of the 2 boys who were stabbed are saying, oh, they were good kids, they were never bullying this kid, maybe they threw a few spitballs at him. Whereas he says they were mercilessly bullying me and threatening me. They cornered me in the bathroom. It was very, very dangerous, and I just defended myself.
We remember at Hetrick Martin Institute when we worked there with the kids, a lot of them would carry knives for protection.
Yeah.
They were not allowed to have knives inside the building. I think they would hide them someplace when they came in, but they were so terrified of being on the streets and the kinds of things that they had to put up with that they carried knives for protection. Now, look, we don't know all the facts in the case. You know, we're not prejudging it, but it's certainly what's come out about the school is that it was a nightmare.
Yes.
For all the kids, that the bullies were running wild. The bullies were bullying the teachers, and the teachers were afraid of them. That the safety of the school had gone down, largely because it had gone through several changes in administration a lot, and it was an absolute mess. We encourage kids to get the hell out of these environments if they possibly can. Even just go for a GED, go to the Harvey Milk School, go somewhere for your own safety.
That's why the Harvey Milk School exists, not for all gay kids, but for kids who are not safe in regular schools like this. But what we are sure of and are condemning is the lack of attention or action about bullying in the schools.
The only reason they have, even on paper, an anti-bullying program is to cover their ass on this kind of stuff. They don't do it. You have to work hard to create environments in the school that are safe, and it's you have to dedicate yourself to that.
You have to make it a priority.
Yes.
Just as you have to make, we have a story this week about textbooks in California. They passed a law that textbooks in California have to include LGBT history, and it's been a fight to get them to fulfill that. You have to start this education at the very beginning of school, and you have to make it a priority. You have to do comprehensive education on certainly LGBT people, on race, on civil rights, on all these things, and they just don't make it a priority. And bullying is something that must be addressed from the very beginning.
Yes.
The result is cases like this, and then there's a terrible case in Newark, New Jersey,
yes,
where a young trans girl, Kylie Perez, 14 years old, viciously attacked at school. She's been bullied for years.
There's the tranny, they would shout at her.
Yeah. Well, she started transitioning when she was 8, and she is just a hero for going through this. She's eager to go back to school, but we have a local news report on her and her mother, and the whole story.
14-year-old Kylie Perez never saw it coming.
I heard the girl go like, "Oh, there's the tranny."
That's her walking away from the surveillance camera, blindsided with a flurry of punches and kicks from at least 4 fellow students, bullies.
2 punches, like just right here, and I fell. And when I fell, it was like, I felt like everybody was coming towards me. Everybody.
You were getting jumped?
Yeah, I was getting jumped.
Kylie and her mother Lillian say bullies have made school life difficult for the last several years.
They'll call me gay and it, so that's what they would usually say.
But especially since her transition from Justin to Kylie in 6th grade.
When I received the call, I just
She started crying. I just panicked.
Kylie and Lillian reported the attack to the school and the Newark Police Department, which has officially classified the attack as a bias incident and notified the Essex County Prosecutor's Office. But they say as far as they know, since Tuesday's attack, Newark school officials have yet to hold any kind of anti-bullying program or intervention initiative at the East Side High School to address what happened in that hallway.
When my daughter goes to school, I expect her to be safe in school.
24 hours after those students jumped Kylie in Newark, New Jersey, another bullying incident ended in tragedy across the Hudson River in the Bronx. That's where 18-year-old high school student Abel Cedeno stabbed 2 students, one of them fatally, after he snapped, as he put it, the result of weeks of being bullied. Kylie Perez says she hopes schools will work harder to address intolerance in school classrooms and hallways before it's too late.
You can't really change anybody how they feel, whether they're straight, bisexual, gay, transgender, anything. That's their decision.
That's your decision.
Yeah, that's my decision. So for somebody to have the need to come into my life and tell me how I should live, I feel like that's just ridiculous.
So in New York,
14 years old,
Right.
a genius. Thank you, Kylie.
Right.
Thank you for your courage. Thank you to your mother for being so supportive and terrific.
that's the difference these days, is parents are standing up for their kids.
It's really great to see that.
Our friend Danny Drum, an out gay council member from Queens, is the head of the Education Committee in New York. He wanted immediate hearings on this. They're not giving it to him until October 30th.
No,
Where's the sense of emergency?
Well, the mayor and the school's chancellor say that Abel Cedeno's school will now do anti-bullying teacher education, for 3 weeks on Mondays.
Well, what's happening right now in that case is the fact that all the students are being intimidated from coming forward and talking about what they saw in terms of the bullying, and the teachers are being intimidated about it.
It's like a mob situation.
I talked to the lawyer. All right. And in Tennessee, a school board wants to remove the policy protecting LGBTQ students and staff at the Knox County Board of Education.
And in Leon County, Florida, a teacher, Chloe Bresak, who identifies as non-binary and asked her 5th grade students to address her as they or them, has been removed from the classroom and reassigned to teach adults because parents of the kids complained that was asking for non-binary pronouns.
Yes. In Arkansas, the Attorney General is appealing the decision of a Washington County judge there to deny the state's request for a preliminary injunction against the Fayetteville anti-discrimination ordinance, which has been allowed to stay in effect while all this is being adjudicated.
And by the way, in California, where they have been having this textbook fight, the commission that reviews textbooks approved 10 inclusive textbooks, but they now have to go before the State Board of Education, which will review them in November. We'll let you know what happens with
We need to do more of that across the country.
In Philadelphia, they're going to dedicate an historical marker for Dr. John Fryer, and you will not recognize him in this photo, but you may recognize the picture. He's on the right.
He's wearing a mask.
This is from 1972 at a conference of the American Psychiatric Association.
Now, he's sitting there with 2 of the great pioneers, Barbara Giddings and Frank Kameny, who really are the father and mother of this movement in many respects, they were all trying to get rid of the illness classification of homosexuality from the American Psychiatric Association. And it was, it's funny, they were really, it was a very hard thing to do, but when it happened, it just happened like immediately in 73.
It becomes immediately apparent that that was a crazy thing to have.
But he had to hide his face, this doctor.
He was the only psychiatrist who was a member of the APA who was willing to talk about it and couldn't talk about it, publicly without disguising
And there
himself.
were others in those days who did show their faces and speak out and would go back to their hospitals or whatever and lose their jobs.
So they're going to have this dedication of an historical marker now 45 years later. And the keynote speaker at the dedication is the current CEO of the American Psychiatric Association, out gay, Dr. Saul Levin.
Now, we weren't going to talk much about Hugh Hefner, obviously, the misogynistic, publisher of Playboy, and that's what I will mostly remember him for. But Charles Francis of the Mattachine Society in D.C. said that Frank Kameny there launched his Gay is Good campaign in the Playboy Forum.
Well, Hugh Hefner was given credit for being a civil rights supporter and pro-gay. But the way he treated the women who were his employees and his partners was shameful.
Right, and Al Goldstein, who published Screw Magazine, back here in the 60s, also a guy who treated women very badly, including most of his wives, but published Gay Magazine and published gay writers. So they all saw this as part of we're loosening things up.
I'm having my
yeah, I know.
coffee.
You go right ahead. You go right ahead, and we will go on with the news.
I think I'm done.
Are we going to move on to international news?
No, I have a couple of things to tell people about. Next Wednesday, October 11th, here in New York City, we will have a dedication ceremony for the raising of the rainbow flag opposite the Stonewall Inn, which is now a national monument. This is the first appearance of the rainbow flag on any national property, I guess.
Don't try it in Egypt. We'll get to that. So this is going to be October 11th at noon. It'll all be over at 12:45 because we got to get up here and tape this show.
That's correct.
So you can get.
But if you're in New York City next Wednesday,
Ann will be
October
hosting.
11th, yes, and Andy will be there too.
I will.
Come down to Christopher Street and 7th Avenue at the Stonewall Inn, where we will be dedicating the rainbow flag on the flagpole.
Yes, this is was all pushed by Michael Petrelis of San Francisco, where they have a big rainbow flag flying in Harvey Milk Plaza.
It was a great idea, and he followed through with the Park Service and got it done. He says all the Park Service people he worked with are gay. So they were amenable.
Whoops.
And I also want to tell you about something called Mobilizing Our Brothers Initiative. This is a conference for black gay men that they're holding in the various boroughs of New York. And this coming Saturday, they're doing one in the Bronx at the Bronx Museum of the Arts from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And then 2 weeks later, on October 21st, they're doing one in Harlem. You can find out more about this by going to their website, Mobilizing Our Brothers Initiative.
MOBI-NYC.com.
Yeah. And we'll have that link on our website.
Yes, sign up for our email list. Go to our website at www.gayusatv, and there's a place to sign up on our website. You put yourself on the list. They send you an email asking you to confirm it. It's all very easy, and then you get a weekly email with a lot of this extra information.
Yes, so you don't have to take notes.
You can
during
find
the
out
show.
what shows I'm recommending in New York. You can find out what movies Chris Cooper is recommending.
Yes.
All right.
International news.
Well, let's start out with the good news. They got same-sex marriage underway in Germany. We have a picture from Hamburg where everybody was in love, and
I think the first couple married was the male couple had been together for like 49 years or something.
Well, it's usually couples have been together for a while.
And in Bermuda, the government has ordered by the court to pay the cost to the couple who sued for marriage rights. They're still arguing about it there. The right wing is still trying to stop it, but the court legalized marriage there last year. People are getting married, and now the government has to pay the costs of the couple who sued.
But the bad news is we are the scapegoats for every right-wing government in the world, it seems, including ours. So in Egypt, this crackdown that we've been telling you about is escalating. Now, this current crackdown started at this concert of, what's the name of the group again? Mashru Leila. Which
Lebanese rock band.
Which is led by an out gay man.
Lead singer.
So people were holding up rainbow flags at this, and this got onto the media. And to listen to the news commentators talking about this. Like, this is worse than terrorism, they said. That kind of stuff. And they immediately started arresting people at the concert, from the concert, people they entrapped through using apps. We told you a little bit about that last week. They're beating people, charging with them debauchery, immorality, and blasphemy, because homosexuality itself is not a crime in Egypt, but they treat it like one.
Habitual debauchery, anal exams, torture.
Exactly. That's how they tell if the men are homosexual. They do an anal exam.
That's how they think.
Forced
they tell.
exam,
Yeah.
which amounts to torture. I mean, it's absolutely heartbreaking what's happening there.
And the same thing is now happening in Azerbaijan. We told you about that last week. It is continuing. More arrests, more violence. Gay men and trans women are the objects of these arrests and torture.
Well, back to Egypt, the Supreme Council for Media Regulation has issued an order saying that the media can only depict LGBTQ people repenting for their unacceptable behavior from the media.
Well,
What is it, Fox News?
That would be mild. Indonesia is considering passing a law that will ban all representations of LGBT people or issues on TV or in the media. Same kind of blackout and censorship.
It's just horrifying.
It is.
And again, you know, the communities there are very small and under siege, and now they just want to make them afraid of being public in any way, shape, or form. But there are people there who are saying they're going to try to fight back about this.
And again, the world is very divided on this. And
the United States expressed concern.
well, the UN Human Rights Office published guidelines for people around the world, businesses in particular, on how to treat LGBT employees, suppliers, customers.
Unless they have religious objections.
And how to advocate for LGBT people with their local governments. Lovely. I wonder if they're being paid attention to in Egypt, Azerbaijan, and Indonesia. Probably
Nice
not.
to see the thousands marched for trans equality in Uruguay.
Very nice. And nice to see in Botswana, a court is allowing trans people to change their gender on their documents, although homosexuality is still illegal in Botswana.
Now, we told you this fantastic story coming out of the Philippines where the Congress voted unanimously for a very far-reaching LGBTQ rights bill.
Yeah.
And we were kind of like, where did this come from?
Wow.
Duterte is the dictator there and all that kind of stuff, right? Well, so, yeah, they did do it, but they also voted at the same time to defund the Commission on Human Rights almost entirely. I think they left them $49.22.
It makes you wonder about the legitimacy and reality of the Philippine Parliament.
It does.
Meanwhile, speaking of bodies of whatever, the Anglican Church is holding its conference in the United Kingdom, and they are condemning and sanctioning the Scottish branch of the church for my people. Well, my people are progressives who perform same-sex marriages in their churches, and now the Archbishop of Canterbury says he's not sure whether gay sex is sinful, and allowing the church to condemn the Scottish church.
The U.S. church is also banned from gatherings because of this. I mean, our friend Rex Wagner said, look, it's eventually going to be two churches, and that's fine.
Should be.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
Maybe there should be two countries since we don't get along. I mean that. All right. Should we talk about what's going on updating on about Australia?
Sure.
Well, one of the big things is they had their Super Bowl this week. It's for their, rugby football. Yeah. And they invited Macklemore to be the act in between the halves. And he sang, what is the name of the song?
Love.
Same Love. And there was a big controversy over this.
Well, because that idiot Tony Abbott, who's the former prime minister, who is virulently anti-gay and anti-same-sex marriage, even though the whole rest of his family has been talking publicly about him being an idiot on this. But he continues to lambasted the idea of same-sex marriage and lambasted the National Rugby League for inviting Macklemore to sing.
Well, Macklemore said, I'm getting a lot of tweets from angry old white dudes in Australia. I think there was a petition today to ban me from playing.
Did we show the picture of him? Oh, yeah.
He said, I'm going to go harder, is what he said, and he did.
He did, and it was very popular. His song, Same Love, which is a song that's about 4 years old, is now #1 in Australia.
And they were a TV ad by the No campaign was banned from airing during the game. He didn't reference the same-sex marriage campaign directly, but everybody knew what he was talking about. And the polls, all right, I know you don't like the polls, but now they're talking about...
Well, this sounds a little more legitimate.
64.3% of respondents say that they sent back their ballots and voted yes, compared with 15.5% who had voted no. I know that doesn't add up to 100%.
No, it adds up to the 80% who have voted.
Yeah.
80% of the population says they have voted in this.
Well, voting is usually compulsory. This is not compulsory. This is an advisory postal vote, which they may or may not abide by, no matter what happens. Our friend Tony Pittman over there in Australia keeps track of this, and he said marriage equality is now reaching 15% of the world's population, but they would add, about 24 million in Australia if that happens. So we got about 500 million now.
Meanwhile, in nearby Taiwan, activists are getting upset because the court there ruled that marriage equality has to happen within 2 years, but the government is dragging its feet, and the premier says it's not going to be dealt with in the current session of Parliament. So things are heating up there.
The other story I love from Australia was that the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, the board went neutral on the marriage referendum, and they rebelled. The orchestra issued their own statement and said, "Oh no, we support it," and the board had to reverse itself and come out for it.
And remember a few years ago when Curacao was in the news because they had so shabbily treated a gay cruise ship? Well, they currently have pride parades in Curacao, and the Prime Minister welcomed the Pride Parade this year and spoke out about how the country really has to change its mind and really has to understand that human rights are important.
That was great.
A very moving speech.
I want to go back to your Anglican church for a while, because Justin Welby was interviewed about, confronted about same-sex marriage and homosexuality, and he was asked about whether homosexuality was sinful, and he said, "You know very well that is a question I can't give a straight answer to." Sorry, badly phrased there. He said, "I should have thought that one through." Meanwhile, a third of young Brits say they experience same-sex attraction, and of this third, 9% of the young respondents identify as bisexual.
The young people are also much more concerned about racism and homophobia than their older counterparts.
Too late, Brexit.
And too late because London is seeing the opening of a new branch office of the Alliance Defending Freedom. Our foes here. Wait till London gets a load of the ADF.
Put up the picture of the lover of the man who commissioned the King James Bible. King James I we knew was homosexual, and they just discovered this portrait of basically his husband, and it's a Rubens. They didn't know it was a Rubens because it had been so retouched so badly, but there he was, and that's the news this week about it.
Well,
this guy's name is
it's
Vieres.
the Duke of Buckingham.
Yes.
And he's buried in Westminster Abbey, where his tombstone describes him as the riddle of the world because of his relationship with James.
James I used to write to him and say, "You were the handsomest bodied man in all of England with a lovely complexion."
He was handsome.
And when they parted, he would weep and all this kind of stuff, and he was gay. Let's see.
Can we please start telling these Republican politicians when they quote the Bible and talk about it that it was commissioned by the translation from the original Greek and Aramaic was commissioned by a gay king.
It is a gay plot. The Bible is a gay plot.
Well, let's find out what version of the Bible they read and quote.
It's the most literary version.
Yes.
It's,
It's the loveliest.
yes.
All right, AIDS news.
But it wasn't written by Shakespeare.
Oh,
He
not
may
the
not have
Bible.
even written the plays. Well, there were people who thought that he had a hand in it,
Oh, okay.
but he didn't.
I thought it was the original Greeks and Aramaics.
I'm talking about the King James version. All right.
All right, so big news out of the Centers for Disease Control this week. They have finally issued an official statement that if you're HIV positive and your virus is so suppressed that it is undetectable because you're on the right drugs consistently, that you cannot transmit HIV.
They said across 3 different studies, including thousands of couples and many thousands of acts of sex without a condom, or pre-exposure prophylaxis, the no HIV transmission to an HIV-negative partner occurred.
They call this effectively no risk.
Yes.
They announced this on National Gay Men's HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. And the Chicago Health Department jumped in and said, we agree. This is our assessment too. This is called U equals U. Undetectable equals untransmissible. So if you see this phrase, U equals U, that's what this refers to.
They've noted, for the first time, a huge drop in HIV diagnosis among gay men in the United Kingdom. A 21% drop. It had been rising steadily since 2007 among gay and bisexual men, but there was a 21% drop in cases from 2015 to last year. So
they
that's
attribute
progress.
this to much wider testing, much better and wider treatment, and PrEP.
Although PrEP is still not officially available from the NHS there.
Just a factor.
People find a way, though.
But the people not finding a way are heterosexual men and women in this study, because the rates of transmission and late diagnoses is still going up among straight men and women who are in this English study. And, this is a phenomenon we used to talk about 30 years ago, this late diagnosis business. And the idea that people don't consider themselves at risk and don't get tested.
Because they're old?
No, just because the world does not teach us that everybody is at risk if they are engaging in risk behavior.
There was a period in the 90s when the schools were teaching about AIDS, and it's still required, and they don't do it now.
Look, I think we've talked about and supposedly mandated universal testing for people of a sexually active age. I have no confidence that that's being carried out. I have not been, I had a wacky doctor years ago who, when I had some complaints, said, well, I'm going to test you for HIV because you're an AIDS activist.
Yes.
He also said, I'm going to file your files under your first name, because if the FBI ever comes to my office looking for your records, I don't want them to be able to find them. He retired. But I don't, I have never since been offered or had suggested an HIV test.
I would have to ask for it when I get my blood work done.
Yeah.
They do not, it is not automatic.
It should be.
I used to ask for it all the time.
It should be.
I don't particularly have a reason to now, but
Ditto, but it should be routinely offered to people who are sexually active or engaging in other risk behaviors.
I was assiduous about getting tested when I was very sexually active in college, and the doctor once lectured me about venereal diseases and things, and because I was coming in, I came in regularly for tests.
Every
and he
week.
said, well, whenever I felt there was a need, and he would say, let me explain something. I said, do you want me to come in for these tests or not? Would you rather I didn't come in here, you're trying to shame me or something? Just do the test.
That's our Andy.
It wasn't as, of course, one of the first times was when I was still living with my parents on Long Island, and I went to the doctor, the local clinic there, and this old guy comes up to me and he goes, You're a homo, aren't you? I swear to God. And I was so nervous about
Well,
the
that
test.
happened to you in the lobby of this building today.
That's true. Some guy from an Orthodox group called me an abomination because he heard we did the Gay USA show. He
Two
said it,
hours ago.
He said it very nicely. It's just what the Bible says, and it does. And it is what it says.
We're thinking of changing the name of the show to Abomination
Abominations?
USA.
Oh, I was going to say abominations are us.
Oh, well, whatever. Send your vote to gayusatv.org.
This poor man obviously worships a false god. All right, so
Well, that's our opinion.
in
So
Cali-
anyway, we are in favor of universal testing. If you really want to stop the epidemic, if you really want to teach people, take care of people,
take care of yourself.
you have to have universal testing. You have to assume that everyone's at risk, and you have to find out where the virus is and treat it and stop it. And that's the way to stop the epidemic.
Some people are nervous about getting tested because of the HIV criminalization laws, and that's a legitimate concern. So they're trying to liberalize these in California, and people are urging you to call Governor Brown there and urging him to sign Senate Bill 239 to modernize California's HIV criminal laws.
Modernize and liberalize has to do with ameliorating some of the draconian laws that criminalize HIV. And the idea is to see it as a disease and not a crime, and treat people a little more reasonably.
Well, the House of Representatives is not treating women reasonably, nor have, I guess, they ever. They just passed legislation to ban abortions after 20 weeks, and any doctors that violate the law could face 5 years in prison. And there are already 3 Democrats in the Senate who support this.
Unbelievable.
So, that fight is far from over. I mean, I remember when we had mass marches on Washington to hold on to abortion rights during the Reagan administration. We are going to have to do that again to preserve this right.
TAG, the Treatment Action Group, is also warning about another proposed bill in Congress that they're calling False Hope. The Compassionate Freedom of Choice Act of 2017 is what the Congress is calling it, but they're very good at coming up with phony language. This is, the Senate has already passed their version of it. It's now up in the House. They're having a hearing in the House. This allows the pharmaceutical companies to sell drugs that have not been fully tested at any, of course, prices they want to sell, and bans holding them liable for any ill effects of these, and bans data collection from the effects of these drugs. It's ironic because, of course, all our work in the late 80s and 90s was about making it easier to get access to drugs that were in the pipeline for HIV. But now the right wing has gone way too far on this and is really irresponsibly trying to pass legislation that would loosen any kind of FDA oversight of these drugs and just make it a free-for-all. And this is very, very dangerous.
Why don't they deregulate cars and not require brakes and see who the real good drivers are? That's an old expression when you get down to this ridiculous level. But we are in an insane society. We don't regulate weapons of mass destruction in this country.
And the impulse of the right wing to deregulate, front page of the New York Times this week, Scott Pruitt at the Interior Department meets only with industry representatives from coal and gas.
Well, that's because Obama only met with the others, so that's why we do that. And that's not true either.
No, it's not true. But they just want to deregulate everything, and
The Wild West. We are returning to the Wild West.
Yeah. All right. Well, entertainment news.
It's not safe.
There's a movie becoming available on Netflix this week, and I think opening in some theaters. A new documentary from David France, who made How to Survive a Plague, Oscar nominated, about ACT UP and treatment activism. Now he is taking on the death and life of Marsha P. Johnson.
Yes.
Very, very famous.
We knew Marcia, a self-described drag queen, Stonewall veteran who was out there on the streets all the time, who died under mysterious circumstances in 1992, I believe.
Yeah.
And this really follows the story of a woman named Victoria Cruz, a trans woman, who worked at the Anti-Violence Project and pursued this case assiduously. That's what you see in the movie, trying to get justice for Marcia. It's I won't tell you what happens in the film, but you know.
Well, what's fascinating, we went to a screening with open minds, but not a lot of expectations, and we loved this film. It was really compelling, and what was astonishing about it, because David and Victoria appeared and spoke a little afterwards, was that when David first tried to talk to Victoria, knowing she had done some of this research, she didn't want to be part of this. And in the end, she said, oh, okay, I'll be part of it. And she's the whole movie.
Right.
And this movie could not exist without her.
I mean, they show her calling the cold case file cops, calling the cops who investigated the case who are not cops anymore, who say, don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong, that kind of stuff.
Wow.
I mean, I want more of an investigation into this. I want, but it's not just about justice for Marsha P. Johnson, who has been dead for more than 20 years. It is about all the transgender women who are being attacked and killed around the country, and we are not getting justice for them.
And it's about the lives that, there's a big portion on Sylvia Rivera in this too, who was a colleague of Marsha's, and about the way they were forced to live and how they were treated by the LGBT community. One of the most startling moments is when Sylvia is on the stage at one of the first Pride marches, and
1973,
and begging for attention from the community and being booed and hissed at. And,
a lot of that came from, I will say, lesbian feminists who did not like drag queens on the stage, and Jean O'Leary was one of the persons who took her off at the time. That was part of the thing. That was part of the thing in the community in those days.
I wouldn't deny that, but I would say there was pretty universal booing, and it was really tragic to see.
Yeah. It's a tremendously moving speech.
Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson, Netflix, and maybe in your local theater now. Also this week opening Chavela, which I told you about last week, which is the story of this legendary lesbian singer who Costa Rican, Mexican, championed by Almodovar. Really fascinating story, so look for that, Chavela. And we both saw, I saw the first episode of Will and Grace.
I saw half
enjoyed it. He walked out in the middle.
I'm not a sitcom fan anymore, I guess.
I don't think you are.
No.
I thought it was better than I expected. We'll see how it develops, but...
I don't like laugh tracks. We don't have one here. We don't need one here.
Because we do all the laughing at ourselves anyway.
And, if you read the New York Times, the play I was promoting, When Pigs Fly, that I was looking forward to, has been canceled.
Couldn't raise the money. But I agree with you about the laugh track. That is oppressive and awful on Will and Grace. But the show itself, I thought, worked.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. I thought that. He didn't. All right. We'll see you next week.
Bye.